So for question 1 of this practical, you're going to need to rely on clipping mask. It says use the function that will crop the background image, and this is the example of what it should look like. We basically need the shape of the circle, but the image behind it. In order to activate a clipping mask, you have to activate the larger layer, not the sublayer. And on the bottom of your layers panel, there should be a button that says make or release clipping mask. It should look something like this. I would recommend locking it once you are done and activating your work area. For question 2, the question says of the following images, which one requires a release to be signed for permission to use? It's the only picture that shows the model's face. The rest are non-recognizable, so don't need a permission. This question requires a little bit of math. The print shop you're using to print high-quality artwork suitable for framing has asked that your images be exported at 300 ppi, which stands for pixels per inch. You want your images at 8 inches by 10 inches. What is the minimum size required to meet the job specifications? What you're going to need to do is basically times 8 by 300 and then 10 by 300. And that'll give you the correct answer. This question here has to do with a process of design, and it is called iterative design. It's when you go back and refine your design. You start off with modifications and planning, implementation, assessing, and then it kind of goes around and around. The next question is kind of referring to what happens when you take a photo of a model. How can you use the document legally? You're going to have to get a model release form to allow that photo to be used. This next question relies on the idea of who your audience is. In this case, this is a mock-up for an elderly person who need assistance. And the question asks, how can you make this site more usable for this audience? Think about who you're trying to make the ad for. You want to kind of think of legibility, because we are working with the elderly, and these fonts down here are way too small. So you're going to want to increase the text size for the service description so that your audience can actually read the services you're offering. When you export from Illustrator, there are 3 file formats that are available. There are more, but out of these options. The first is the PSD, which stands for Photoshop Document, a PNG, which holds transparencies, and the SVG, which also holds transparencies. Next question relies on you knowing how to use the color guide panel. It says use the blue rectangle in the document as the base color and create a new color group that uses the monochromatic harmony rule. So first things first, let's pull up that guide. Let's click on the blue, make sure it's our base color, and find monochromatic. But there's one more step we have to do to get this question right, and we have to hit this button on the bottom right to save the color to our swatches. We know we did this right because if we go to Windows Swatches, we should find that set of blue pop down on the bottom. Question 10 relies on you finding a symbols library. So first, let's go to our symbols panel, access our library, and it says it's the flowers library. Let's find the one that says red rose. And it says to drag on either side, so left or right. Question 10 is asking you to edit the artboard so that the orientation is landscape, which means the width is larger than the height. To do that, first we need to be in our properties panel. We can hit edit artboards. We want to click on the one named iPhone and swap it so that it is landscape. The orientations are these buttons here. You can also pull this up in your artboards panel. Next questions ask you to use your transform panel to move a design to a specific position in the document. It gives you X and Y values. So you should select the object in the upper right hand corner, type in the values. Next, we're matching some tools. Think about what tool you use to modify the type of anchor point, whether it's a curved or a pointed angle. And that is our convert anchor point tool. The next tool describes one that selects objects with similar properties, which is our magic wand tool. And the next description says to select the parent of a selected object. Parent meaning there's a group. It is the group selection tool. And lastly, the pen tool is used to draw straight and curved paths. Next question relies on you to use the type on path tool. First thing you have to do is access that tool with the type tool, click on the path, and type in the words. It also asks you to center the type. So I would highlight your type, make sure you're going to your right part of your screen where your properties are, and you should have something that says align center. It will align it in the center of the path. This next question relies a lot of setting changes. First thing you're going to need to do is go here to the right, and there's a button where it says rulers and guides that says click to show grid. Then we're going to have to edit these by going to preferences, finding guides and grids, and changing the settings here. I gave you something in pixels. You would type px for pixels, type in the information. The second part of the question tells you to adjust the position of the square group so it aligns. Right now, these squares don't align with the grid. All that means is pushing the squares over till they match up where the grid lines end. The last questions ask you to organize all the objects into a single layer with no sublayers. So you're going to activate all your layers by holding Shift or Control in your computers, hitting the Options button on the upper right hand corner, clicking on the option that says Flatten Artwork. It will push it all into one layer, and then simply renaming this.